Okay, welcome in one and all. I'm now going to review all of Tuesday's action of the NHL schedule. All 32 teams were in action, so therefore there were 16 games on tap for that particular day. So I'm just going to go over the teams that predicted that did win, who actually won, the scoring summary, and the record of the team thus far. So the first matchup takes place in the nation's capital of the U.S., the Washington Capitals. Ironically, they have their last name as the Capitals. They played host to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I did predict that Toronto would get the victory, and they sure did. 4-1 was the final score, despite the fact they were outshot 38-17. So it just goes to show how great their goaltending is. And if they can get 4 goals on 17 shots, well, they're doing pretty okay in my books. So the lone goal in the first was from Morgan Riley on the power play, assisted by Liljegren and Domi. That came at about the 13-minute mark of the first, so it was 1-0 for the Leafs heading into the second period, where the floodgates absolutely opened. John Tavares would increase the lead about 5 minutes and 41 seconds in the second, an even strength goal from Morgan Riley and Tyler Bertuzzi. William Nylander would then increase that lead about 50 seconds later, an even strength goal from Austin Matthews. And speaking of Austin Matthews, the man himself, with just under 5 minutes to go in the frame, would get a power play goal from Marner and Klingberg to make it 4-0 at that point. Ovechkin would get a power play goal, finally getting on the score sheet for the first time this season, goal-wise at least. He got a power play goal with about 10 seconds to go in the frame, assisted by Carlson and Tom Wilson. So it was 4-1 heading into the third period, but there were no goals in that third and final frame. So 4-1 is where they 4-1 was the final from Washington. So the Toronto Maple Leafs are now improved to 4-2-0 on the season, while the Capitals, to say that they're struggling to come out of the gates would be an understatement. They are now sitting at 1-4-0. Our next matchup takes place north of the border in La Province de Quebec, where we have the team that I cheer for, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I knew they weren't going to get the victory. The Montreal Canadiens did play host to the New Jersey Devils. I did predict the Devils would get the victory only because they were more rested. I believe they're a better team, and obviously the Habs played the night before, and I believe it's just, in my opinion, it's hard to play back-to-back nights, especially when you travel. So, yeah, I just had a hunch that the Devils would get the victory, and they sure did. 5-2 was the final score. So Justin Barron would kick things off for the Habs in the first with just under 6 minutes into the frame, assisted by Michael Pezzetta. So it was 1-0 for the Habs. Alexander Holtz would then tie things up. I want to say just under 7 minutes to go in the first, an even strength goal from Meyer and Hamilton. So it was 1-1 heading into the second period. The lone goal in the second came from Tyler Toffoli, a former Hab. An even strength goal from Jack Hughes. That happened with just about 1 minute and 40 seconds to go in that frame. So it was 2-1 for the Devils heading into the third and final frame. Nico Hischier would then get a power play goal about 34 seconds into the third, assisted by Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. Tyler Toffoli would get his second goal of the game to increase the lead to 4-1. That happened at the 7 minute and 17 second mark, assisted by Jack Hughes, a power play goal at that. Mike Matheson would cut the deficit in half, and power play goal for himself at the 10 minute and 35 second mark, assisted by Cole Caulfield. And then Tyler Toffoli would get a hat trick with about 26 seconds to go to increase the lead to 5-2. So that's where we stood at that at the final. So the Devils have now improved to 3-1-1 on the season, while Montreal is now sitting at 3-2-1 so far this year. Our next matchup takes place in the nation's capital of Canada, where we have the host Ottawa Senators, and they were taking on an Atlantic Division foe in the Buffalo Sabres. I did predict that Ottawa would get the victory, but it was not meant to be. The Sabres came away victorious after losing the night before. 6-4 was the final score, so it was a high-scoring affair, to say the least. In the first, at the 8 minute and 6 second mark, Jeff Skinner would kick things off for the Sabres, making it 1-0. An even strength goal from Tuck and Middlestad. Zemgris Jigersons, if that's even how you pronounce his name. About 3 minutes later, we're getting even strength goal from Clifton and Okposo. So it was 2-0 for the Sabres heading into the second period. Jeff Skinner would then increase the lead to 3-0, assisted by Cousins and Middlestat at the 4-minute and 4-second mark of the second. Jacob Shishurkin would finally get the Senators on the board. An even strength goal from Hamonic and Tarasenko. Alex Tuck would increase the lead back to 4-1 at that point. A power play goal with just under 3 minutes to go in the second, assisted by Darlene and Thompson. And Tage Thompson would then score about just under 2 minutes after that, an even strength goal from Power and Jokira. So it was 5-1 heading into the third and final frame. Tarasenko would then get on the board, an even strength goal with just under 5 minutes to go, assisted by Shabbat and Joseph. Josh Norris would then decrease the lead to 2 goals. I want to say just over 3 minutes, just under a minute and 20 seconds to go. A power play goal from Batherson and Stussel. And then 20 seconds after that, Matthew Joseph would then decrease the lead to 5-4, an even strength goal from Gregg and Sanderson. And then Tage Thompson with a shorthanded goal with just about 23 seconds to go. No assists on his goal. So 6-4 is the final from Ottawa. The Sabres are now sitting at 3-4-0 on the season so far. And Ottawa is now back to 500. They are sitting at 3-3-0. The next matchup takes place in Florida, where we have the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they played host to the Carolina Hurricanes. I did think that the Hurricanes would be able to bounce back after losing 2 straight games to be able to get back to the win column, but unfortunately it was not meant to be. 3-0 was the final score from Tampa. So now we'll take a look at the scoring summary. So the lone goal in the first came on the power play with just under a minute to go. Braden Point would score, assisted by Hedman and Kucherov. In the second period, Alex Barry-Beaulieu would get an even strength goal with just over 2 minutes to go, assisted by Radish and Point. So it was 2-0 for the Lightning heading into the third. And with just under 3 minutes to go in the third, Nick Paul would score, assisted by Hagel and Sergachev. So 3-0 was the final from Tampa. The Lightning are now sitting at 3-2-2 on the season so far, while the Hurricanes have now dropped 3 straight. They are now sitting at 3-4-0. The next matchup takes place in the state of Pennsylvania, where we would have the Dallas Stars, who would go into Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. I did predict that the Stars would be victorious, and they sure did get the victory. 4-1 was the final score. So Brian Rust would kick things off with just under a minute to go in the first, assisted by Gensel and Crosby. So it was 1-0 for the Penguins. But after that, it was all the Stars. After that, Jason Robertson would tie things up with just about 8 minutes into the frame, assisted by Craig Smith and Rupi Hintz. Evgeny Dadonov would then score with just under 4 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Duchesne and Harley. So it was 2-1 for the Stars heading into the third and final frame, where Tom Harley would then increase the lead to 3-1 with just over 5 minutes into that period. An even strength goal from Pavelski and Robertson, and then Wyatt Johnson with just over 6 minutes to go in the frame. An even strength goal from Jamie Benn would increase the lead to 4-1. So the Stars are now sitting at 4-0-1 on the season, while the Penguins are sitting at 2-4-0 so far. The next matchup takes place back in Florida, where we have the Panthers, who played host to the San Jose Sharks. Here we go. Due to the fact that Sharks have still yet to win a game, I was obviously more in favor of the Panthers getting the victory, and they sure did. 3-1 was the final score. So Fabian Zetterlund would kick things off for the Sharks in the first at the 8 minute and 30-second mark. A power play goal assisted by Eklund and Bordelot. Carter Verhaeghe would then score about a minute and 28 seconds later, an even strength goal from Matthew Tkachuk and Louis Strainen. Sam Leinhart would then increase the lead with just under 5 minutes to go in the frame. A power play goal from Ekman Larson and Evan Rodriguez. So it was 2-1 for the Panthers heading into the third period. I should have mentioned that there were no goals in the first as well. Kevin Steelan would then pretty much ice the game with 2 seconds left. Matthew Tkachuk and Lindell got the assists on that goal. So the Panthers are now back to 500. They're sitting at 3-3-0 on the season, while the Sharks are off to probably one of the worst starts in history. After 6 games, they're now sitting at 0-5-1 on the season. So they're tanking at the start of the season. The next matchup takes place on Long Island, where we have the New York Islanders, and they would play host to one of the few undefeated teams still in the league, in the Colorado Avalanche. I did predict that the Avalanche would be victorious, and my oh my, a huge win, 7-4 was the final score. 11 goals scored between the two teams. So Ryan Johansson would kick things off in the first, just under 5 minutes into the frame. A power play goal from Rantanen and Makar. Cal Clutterbuck would then tie things up about halfway into that first period. An even strength goal from Dobson and Peugeot. Cale Makar would increase the lead to 2-1 with just over 7 minutes to go in the frame. A even strength goal from Rantanen and Tays. So it was 2-1 for the Avalanche heading into the second period. Kyle Palmieri would tie things up for the Islanders just about 3 minutes into that second period, assisted by Barzal and Dobson. Simon Holmstrom would then give the Islanders their first lead, 3-2, at about the 14-minute mark, I should apologize, of that period. An even strength goal from Clutterbuck and Peugeot. Bowen Byram would tie things up with about 40 seconds to go in the frame, an even strength goal from Nichushkin and Cale Makar. And then, 13 seconds after that, McKinnon would then give the Avs a lead, an even strength goal from Nichushkin. So it was 4-3 for the Avs heading into the third and final frame. Anders Lee would then tie things up just under 5 minutes into that third period. An even strength goal, no assists on the play. Mikko Rantanen would then give the Avalanche a 5-4 lead, which around the 8-minute mark, assisted by Tatar. Ryan Johansson, would then increase the lead to 6-4 with about a minute to go in the frame. Rantanen would then assist on his goal. And then about 30 seconds after that, Ross Colton would increase the lead to 7-4. No assists on his goal. So 7-4 is the final from Long Island. The Avalanche are now sitting at 6-0-0 to start this season, which is absolutely fantastic. And the Islanders are now sitting at 2-2-1. Our next matchup should take place in the state of Michigan, where we would have the Detroit Red Wings, who are off to a fantastic start, taking on the Seattle Kraken, who are not off to the best of starts. Due to the records, I did predict that Detroit would get the victory. They actually had a pretty decent lead, but the Kraken would slowly chip away at it, come back, and get the victory in overtime. So I'll take a look at the scoring summary here right away. So there were no goals scored in the first. Oh, I do apologize. It was the other way around. The Kraken had an early lead, and Detroit came back, and then the Kraken would win. So I'll get onto that. So no goals scored in the first. Joe Velena would then give the Red Wings a 1-0 lead, just over a minute to go. So just over a minute into that frame. An even strength goal from Mata and Sprong. Jaden Schwartz would then tie things up about 5 minutes into that frame. A power play goal from Dunn and Beniers. Jaden Schwartz with his second goal of the game, with just over 2 minutes to go in that second. An even strength goal from Wenberg and Bjorkstad. Ty Carl would then increase the lead with just under a minute to go to 3-1, assisted by Dumblin. So it was 3-1 for the Kraken. Heading into the third and potential final frame. Shane Gostisbehere would get a power play goal over 2 minutes into the third, assisted by Sider and Larkin. Larkin would then increase the lead to would then tie things up at 3, just about 4 minutes and 38 seconds into that frame. The power play goal from Gostisbehere and Sider. Alex DeBrincat would then increase the lead another power play goal for the Red Wings, assisted by Larkin and Gostisbehere. This is about halfway into that third. And then Jared McCann would score about a minute and 20 seconds left, a power play goal for the Kraken, assisted by Beniers and Eberle. So it was all tied up, obviously heading into the overtime frame. And took almost until the end of the overtime period to get a goal. Jordan Eberle would get the game winner with about 5 seconds to go, an even strength goal from McCann and Dunn. So the Kraken got a huge win. They are now sitting at 2-4-1 on the season, while the Red Wings are sitting at 5-1-1. Still not too shabby after 7 games. The next matchup takes place. Where are we? In Ohio, where we'd have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who would play host to the Anaheim Ducks. I did predict that Columbus would get the victory. It was close, but the Ducks prevailed, getting a 3-2 win in overtime. So the lone goal in the first came on the power play with over 3 minutes to go in the frame. Emil Bemstrom would score, assisted by Perovov and Fantilli. So it was 1-0 for the 1-0, I apologize, for the Blue Jackets heading into the second period. And the lone goal that happened in the second came from Ryan Strome, an even strength goal, assisted by Minkulov and McTavish. And that goal happened with just over 4 minutes into the 4 minutes left in the frame. The 2 goals in the third, obviously one from the Jackets and one from the Ducks. Adam Fantilli would score at the 9-minute and 13-second mark, an even strength goal from Roslovic and Beam. And then Brett Leeson would tie things up, assisted by Johnston, with just under 4 to go in the third period. Frank Vatarno would get the overtime winner at the 2-minute and 20-second mark, assisted by Gruel, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. So the Ducks obviously prevailed and got the victory in overtime. So they are now sitting at 2-4-0 on the season, while the Jackets are sitting at 3-2-1. The next matchup should take place in Illinois, where we have the Chicago Blackhawks, who would play host to one of the 3 undefeated teams in the Boston Bruins. And obviously with the Bruins being on such a hot streak and being, like I said, one of the few teams that are still undefeated, I had no choice but to favor them in this matchup. And they did. They got a shutout. 3-0 was the final score. So there were no goals in the first. The second period, Pavel Zacha would get an even strength goal, which is about 4 minutes into the frame, and assisted by Shattenkirk and DeBrusk. So it was 1-0 for the Bruins heading into the third period. Matthew Portreus, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, at the 4-minute and 6-second mark would then increase the lead to 2-0, assisted by Morgan Geekie. And then Trent Frederick would increase the lead less than a minute after that to 3-0, an even strength goal from Van Riemsdyk and Charlie Coyle. So 3-0 was the final, like I said, from Chicago. The Bruins are now sitting at 6-0-0 to start the season, while the Chicago Blackhawks are sitting at 2-5-0 so far. The next matchup that I am going to review takes place in the province of Manitoba, where we would have the Winnipeg Jets, and they would play host to a team they're quite familiar with in the St. Louis Blues. I did predict the Blues would get the victory in this one, but yeah, not meant to be. The Jets prevailed. 4-2 was the final score. There were no goals scored in the first, so David Gustafson would kick things off about 3 minutes into the frame for the Jets. An even strength goal from Perfetti and DeMello. Mason Appleton would increase the lead to 2-0. I want to say about 5 plus 13. But less than 20 seconds after that, an even strength goal from Lowry and Pionk. Pavel Pujnevich would then decrease the lead to 2-1. He would get a power play goal from Braden Shen and Kyrou, so it was 2-1 for the Jets heading into the third period. Kyle Connor would increase the lead to 3-1, an even strength goal from Nate Schmidt at the 4-minute and 10-second mark. Robert Thomas would then decreased the lead to 3-2. An even strength goal with just under 4 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Buchnevich, and then Morgan Barron would put the game on ice with about 1 minute and 10 seconds to go. An even strength goal from Scheifele and Pionk. So 4-2 was the final from Winnipeg. The Jets have now got back to 500. They are now sitting at 3-3-0 on the season, while the Blues are sitting at 2-2-1 so far. The next matchup takes place in Minnesota, where we would have the Wild, who would play host to a team that's probably not off to the best start in the Edmonton Oilers. I did predict that the Wild would come away with the victory in this one, only because the Oilers are off to such a sloppy start, to say the least. And obviously, when you lose the best player on your team and quite possibly one of the best players in the league, it sure is going to show on the score sheet. So 7-4 was the final score. Evan Bouchard would kick things off, an even strength goal with just under a minute into the frame, assisted by Kane and Draisaitl. Marco Rossi would get an even strength goal just about at the 8-minute mark of the first to tie things up, assisted by Hartman and Middleton. Warren Foegele would then increase the lead to 2-1 for the Oilers with about 1.5 minutes to go. An even strength goal from Bouchard and Ekholm. Ryan Hartman would then tie things up at 2 with about a minute left to go. An even strength goal from Middleton and Addison. So it was 2-2 heading into the second period. Warren Foegele would then increase the lead to 3-2, a second goal of the game at 32 seconds into the frame, assisted by Nurse and Hyman. So it was 3-2 heading into the third period. So there was some hope, but it didn't last long. Ryan Hartman would then tie things up 38 seconds into the third. An even strength goal from Zuccarello and Kaprizov. Zuccarello would then increase the lead at around the 7-minute mark to 4-3, an even strength goal from Kaprizov and Hartman. Joel Eriksson Ek would then increase the lead to 5-3 at the 10-minute and 28-second mark, assisted by Maroon and Johansson, an even strength goal. So it was 5-3 at that point. Evander Kane would then get a power play goal at the 12-minute and 55-second mark, assisted by Bouchard and Draisaitl. And then after that, it was all Wild. They would then increase the lead to 6-4. A goal from Hartman, his hat trick, actually, assisted by Middleton and Kaprizov at the 15-minute and 50-second mark. And then Marcus Foligno would then increase the lead to 7-4, less than a minute after that, assisted by Joel Eriksson Ek. So 7-4 is the final from Minnesota. The Wild are now sitting at 3-2-1 on the season so far, while the Oilers have dropped to 1-4-1. Not a very good start to your season. Only one win in, 6 games? It's not looking too good. The next matchup takes place in Nashville, where we have the Predators, who would play host to the Vancouver Canucks. I did predict that Nashville would come away with the victory in this one, only because the Canucks have been so inconsistent, but they've actually managed to get 2 wins in a row. 3-2 is the final score. So in the first, Ilya Mikheyev would score about 4.5 minutes into the frame, an even strength goal from Kuzmenko and Ian Cole. Colton Sissons would tie things up with just over 4 minutes to go in the frame. No assists on his play, so it was 1-1 heading into the second period. Philip DiGiuseppe would increase the lead to 2-1 just over 20 seconds into the second, assisted by Brock Besser, I should say. Nils Hoglander would increase the lead to 3-1 at the 3-minute and 11-second mark of the frame, assisted by Quinn Hughes and Hronek. And Kiefer Sherwood would then decrease the lead to 3-2 about halfway into that period. An even strength goal from Novak. There were no goals scored in the third, so 3-2 is where the game ends on that. On that note, I should say. So the Canucks are now sitting at 4-2-0 on the season, while the Predators are now sitting at 3-4-0 so far. The next matchup takes place in the province of Alberta, where we would have the Calgary Flames, who would play host to the New York Rangers. I did predict that Calgary would be able to get the victory in this one. It was not meant to be. The Rangers prevailed. 3-1 was the final score. So Blake Coleman would kick things off in the first, a minute and 15 seconds into the frame. An even strength goal from Backlund and Mangiapane. It was the lone goal in the first period, so the Flames are up 1-0 heading into the second period, where it was all New York after that. Alex Lafreniere would get a power play goal at the 7-minute and 38-second mark to tie things up, assisted by Gustafsson and Chittle. Chris Kreider would then increase the lead on the power play, their second power play goal of the game. Just under 6 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Panarin and Adam Fox. And then Eric Gustafsson would then increase the lead just over 3 minutes to go in that second period. An even strength goal from Chittle and Miller. So 3-1 is where the final from Calgary. The Rangers are now sitting at 4-2-0 to start the season, while the Flames are sitting at 2-4-1 so far. Two games left to take a look at. Our next matchup takes place in California, where we would have the host Los Angeles Kings, and they would take on the Arizona Coyotes. I did predict that the Los Angeles Kings would prevail in this matchup, and boy oh boy, did they ever. They doubled up the Coyotes. 6-3 was the final score. Take a look at the scoring summary. So Jake McBain would kick things off for the Coyotes in the first at the 3-minute mark. An even strength goal from Boyd and Marcelli. Anze Kopitar would tie things up for the Kings at the 8-minute and 13-second mark. A power play goal from Fiala and Kemp. Trevor Lewis would then increase the lead to 2-1 about halfway through. An even strength goal from Lizotte and Englund. Trevor Moore would then increase the lead to 3-1 about 2 minutes after Lewis scored an even strength goal from Deneau and Anderson. So it was 3-1 for the Kings heading into the second period. Nick Bustad would then decrease the lead to 3-2 just over 6 minutes into the frame. An even strength goal from Krause and Carcon. Blake Lizotte would score to increase the lead to 4-2 at the 7-minute and 39-second mark, assisted by Doughty. So it was 4-2 at that point. Clayton Keller would then decrease the lead to 4-3 on a power play goal with about 2.5 minutes to go, assisted by Cooley and Schmaltz. So it was 4-3 heading into the third period. And the lone two goals came from the Kings. Kevin Fiala would score about 5.5 minutes into the frame. An even strength goal from Garakov and Spence. And then just under 40 seconds to go in the frame, Adrian Kempe would pretty much ice the game. 6-3 at that point, an even strength goal from Byfield and Kopitar. So 6-3, it was the final from Los Angeles. They are now sitting at 3-2-1 so far to start the season, while the Coyotes are back to 500. They're sitting at 3-3-0 after 6 games. The final game takes place in Nevada, where we have the defending Stanley Cup champs in the Vegas Golden Knights, and they played host to the Philadelphia Flyers. There they are. So I did predict that Vegas would get the victory only because they're still one of the 3 undefeated teams in the league. It was a close contest, but they did prevail. 3-2 was the final score. Ivan Barbashev would kick things off about 7 minutes into the frame in the first. An even strength goal from Eichel and Marchessault. Noah Cates would then tie things up for the Flyers at around the 7-minute mark. An even strength goal from Farabee and Sinham. Cam Atkinson would actually give the Flyers a lead with just under 3 minutes to go. An even strength goal from Tippett and Cam York. So it was 2-1 for the Flyers heading into the second. Where there weren't any goals in the second, it took until the third for the Golden Knights to get back on the board. So with just under 8 minutes to go, Paul Cotter would tie things up. An even strength goal from Carlson and Korchek. And then Shea Theodore, looked like the game was going into overtime, but with just over 30 seconds to go, he would increase the lead to 3-2. An even strength goal from Eichel and McNabb. So 3-2 was the final from Vegas. Vegas are now sitting at 7-0-0, which is absolutely absurd in my opinion. And the Flyers are now sitting at 3-2-1 so far on the season. Thank you all for tuning in. If you happen to watch the entirety of this half an hour video, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, I do videos on the daily. Feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative at the same time. And as always, take care.